Hi. Hey.
Hi. I'm excited to sit with you guys and talk about the new Stargate series that was just announced at Amazon.
Stargate's back.
Stargate's back. This is
So,
wild.
question.
Okay.
Do you remember how you found out about the news?
I do. My mom texted me. My mom is my biggest fan. It's actually really funny. I think she Googles my name every once in a while just to see what pops up. But she she sent me she sent me your interview that you did with the team, with the Stargate team announcing it. And so she's like, look, Stargate's back.
Because she's subscribed to Dial the Gate and Gate.
Probably.
That's right.
She's the number one fan.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Wow. How did I find out? I think it was on TikTok.
Really?
TikTok, no, Instagram. And just watching, and all of a sudden, and I was actually doing a movie with Paul McGillion. And he goes, you hear the news? And I said, yes, I did. Did you? He goes, yeah. So we're pretty exciting. And then I proceeded to text Martin Giro and just say, hey, how are you? How you doing? Congratulations. No, I don't expect to be back. So for me, it's just a matter of congratulations. I can't believe the news. And same with Joe Malazzi. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. And that was good to find out about it. I was a little surprised because I hadn't heard anything leading up to it. Did you guys?
I had a sneaking suspicion that it might very well happen, and so I would check the news, every once in a while. But that day that I don't know how I saw it. I think it was Instagram as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was a combo of maybe Dial the Gate World, a little bit of the trades, and it just in one day it was just like, and my jaw was like, oh my god!
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I was so excited, and then I just went down the rabbit hole that whole day, like researching articles, looking at trades, like reading as much as I could, and and then watching the YouTube shows and seeing like what was everyone saying, and going down the rabbit hole about because Martin Giro I don't know that well. Because I'm an SG1 girl, and not that, was he?
I think he did some SG1,
but he wasn't like as forefront in my experience at the time, like personally. But I do know his wife. Her and I go way back. So that's very exciting. But I was so excited. And Chris Judge, who's a friend of mine, when I lived in LA, he would call me once in a while, and we'd always talk about, potential things. So, yeah, I'm really excited.
You guys are both so optimistic. I was a little bit like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh, really?
There's been so much stuff online for so many years. Like,
Yeah.
It's coming. But then when I actually saw the Delegate video with David and Darren, I was like, oh, okay, it is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Joe and I talk every once in a while, Joe Malazzi and I, and we were talking about his project that I was producing and trying to get together, and he never mentioned it to me. Never said, there might be, Stargate coming back, and never said a word to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh. And then it came out. I'm like, well, I thought we were closer than that, but that's okay. My feelings weren't hurt.
Yeah, but Joe's been in the biz so long. He's decades of this. Probably.
Well, also, I know all of us, too, have seen it's not a sure thing until the papers are signed, right? So you never know what could happen. But it's about time. I think Stargate needs to be back. I mean, the fans' reactions were wild to me. How they were so excited about Stargate potentially coming back, and now that it is, it's such a great thing.
I would add that even the cast is just as excited.
Yeah.
We're all just like, okay. Even if I died, I could come back, and it's sci-fi.
The stories are endless. Like, regardless of the OG cast members, like the actual stories are endless for that. And the fact that they can incorporate the OG cast members from SG1 and Atlantis.
Yeah, because
there's so many storylines they can do. There's so many characters.
And it's not a reboot, correct? Mm-hmm. It's there's still going to be it's a new Stargate, but it's I guess they'll incorporate some of the old cast to some extent. I don't know, but.
I'm going to throw this out there. This is my guess. It's going to be Samantha Carter's daughter is the lead, probably. And I'm just throwing that out there. And it's her trials and tribulations of trying to make it through, like, the Stargate program.
Well, online, they have said that Mike Shanks, Amanda Tapping, and Ben Browder have all been contacted previous.
Wow.
And then they were all given an email of, hey, we're back. So there's a bit of wink.
All of the cast were contacted, everybody.
Which
Wow.
all the cast was, yes, contacted. I saw that too. And I actually think that's a really lovely courtesy.
It's
They
a
gave
classy
all those.
notification.
It's so classy.
Classy move.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So, what excites you about the new Stargate series?
Well, for me, I guess technology, I think will could potentially make it better because, I mean, I can't even remember when we started, 97, 96, 97, the series started. I would think that technology and what they're able to do with the different worlds and the different places they can go, I think it leads to a lot more, I guess potentially a lot more planets and worlds that they could go to and diverse. They'll be so different, right? And they can do that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting. And to see what storylines they come up with will be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also
What about
think,
you? What do you
well,
think?
I also
Huh?
think that as a world, we have become a little bit more spiritually aware in the last 20 years. And I think that the original Stargate shows had a bit of that spiritual awareness that was always just kind of like touched on a little bit, but still had a little bit of the playfulness. So I think that you can bring in a lot of what's happening in today's world without obviously touching hot topics, but still bring up that spiritual element of everything.
Yeah.
And you?
Well, I think to touch on kind of what you said, I mean, Amazon obviously has deep pockets, so we don't have the restrictions of a lot of budgetary concerns, because I think initially with the series filming in Vancouver, it was because the dollar stretched further here, and also some of the series, like I think Universe had, correct me if I'm wrong, had a smaller budget, so it was kind of almost like not quite a bottle episode, but having it all on the same set continually more often than not, even though they did go to other worlds and, you know, travel to Earth, I guess. Now they can do whatever they want. So if they even need to reverse age people, they could, or, you know, especially the effects is, you know, whatever.
my
And
goodness.
I love hearing the news that they're already reaching out to all the best effects houses right now for the new series. I think that's really juicy. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff I'm really excited for. I love the idea of the fan service and bringing back a lot of elements and characters and places and also just, yeah, seeing where the new technology goes and the new characters and all that. Yeah. Would you like to come back as your character or someone new?
I mean, I've already thought about this as soon as they announced it. I'm like, okay, like Amelia Banks would be the captain of her own ship by now. I mean, that's obvious. She's a middle-aged woman. Come on, and she would have had children with Ronan Dax, and they'd be like crazy and wild. And then because Ronan's character is a runner, like Mike's character, he'd have to be the godfather, and then he'd have to be looking out for all these crazy teenagers. And then Simone's character, they'd end up on the planet with all the Jaffa, and then they'd have like a Romeo and Juliet thing between like my crazy kids and the Simone's Jaffa kids. Like it's just. The storylines are endless.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
I'm glad you thought about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in depth. I like it. Wow, character. Well, what about you? What character would you like to come back as your character?
I do
Or
love Kalel, and I love the journey that she's had, and so now she's kind of running show, right?
Yeah, she'd be the queen of her
And-
planet, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of interesting things that they could explore. Like, if they go back in time, which also has been suggested that might happen, maybe, where people do origin stories of certain storylines, I think it would be interesting to see perhaps the origin of the Haktil and that. But then also, I'd like to be in a, fast forward mode where we see maybe Kalel in a love relationship or two, and see, maybe she dates another alien, and maybe she dates, like someone like a
Ben
like
Prowler's
Eli,
character.
or,
That's right.
whoever. Like maybe there's a crossover, and who knows. But I I think it'd be cool to see a bunch of characters jam from all the 3 main series, in my opinion. Yeah. And then you as Varro on Stargate Universe, remember you're on ice.
Yes. Now that would be amazing to find out what happened. Do we survive? Hopefully we do. And that was the funny thing when we did that, when everybody was on ice, it was like, yeah, we're negotiating for season 3, and whoever doesn't come back is because the negotiations didn't work out. So they stay on ice. Oh, well, that character didn't make it, or that character. I'm like, well, wait a second. And then we got canceled promptly right after that conversation. But no, I would love to find out what happens with Varro. I mean, I'd venture to say that he was a leader as well, leader of men. So I think he would be put in that position because he finally became a member of the crew. So being in Lucian Alliance was probably the only guy that was able to become a member of Stargate. So I think that would be an interesting storyline, and see how far they can go with that. But yeah, and see where his relationships with TJ ended up, and if it progressed, if it moved forward, or if it just stopped after we came to. But yeah, be a lot of possibilities.
The storylines really are endless, right?
I would definitely like to do some epic battle scenes too, because I love doing action, and that would be awesome.
You should. Your character's
and
like an Amazon
I'm just going to plant that seed. I would love to direct as well.
Oh, look at you!
Yeah,
I like it.
There.
Yeah.
I like it. Fight scenes, yeah. You don't know anything about fight scenes.
No.
Do you think they should bring in new lead characters or work off who they already have in the existing character base?
Oh, they'd have to bring in new characters.
Yeah,
I think they would have to bring in new characters. Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with bringing people you've already got.
Well, they have to do that as well.
I mean,
I think they have to do that as well, bring people back. But I do think there has to be a new set of characters to lead the way. Just because I think what they'd said also is they wanted to bring in a new fan base as well. So that might be a way to create a new fan base with other actors or popular actors or such.
Yeah, that maybe have their own following.
Exactly.
Already.
And I think that would be an interesting... But why not have both? I think you can. I think it's possible.
I also believe, though, that you don't always need already existing famous people. I do believe that you can make people. Because remember, Momoa, that was kind of one of his start series.
Absolutely.
Was it not?
Yeah.
And look at him now.
Yeah.
Baby's all grown up.
Yeah, that's right. He's a superhero now.
Yeah, so there's that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, Varro was a great character, but man, I was very fortunate to play a couple different ones. And Joe Malazzi he had the perfect way. I can't remember how he did it, but there was a way in which 3 characters were intertwined. And how
the ones that you played,
yeah,
because you're one of the only actors
I
that
know.
actually played
it's
in all
wild.
3.
It's almost like
it's
an
a grateful. In my own mind,
In
sure.
my own,
yeah.
He's the Easter egg.
I'm
Yeah.
being demented, but yeah, no, it's great.
No, but it's cool, right? I think in that way. But I'm curious to see, because you brought up Jason Momoa and the character Keurig too. See what would happen, because he went through the gate, and see what happens if they were able to go on mission. I know they had discussed that before, that Jason and I go on these missions, and that would have been badass. I think.
That would have been so fun. In fact, both of you guys had badass costumes, like with your leathers and your tough warrior stuff. I was kind of dorky.
And that was the thing. I always had to wear leather on the show.
Because you look so good in it. That's why.
And shout out to the costumers too.
Pardon me?
You were not dorky.
Thank you. I was very official.
That's right.
Yeah. Where do you think the new Stargate series should film, and why?
Well, it should
That's not a loaded question.
Film in Vancouver, because that's literally where the whole cast lives. Like, Amanda Tapping, Michael Shanks, everybody. We all live here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if obviously it's a biased opinion, but I would say Vancouver. It's got to be in Vancouver.
And like I've said, I think it makes sense because if Martin, I believe, is in LA, his wife was from Vancouver, hint, hint. And then also if Joe's out east and, he likes Vancouver,
Oh, yeah.
Theory. I don't know. I
he
think it
likes
would
the
make a
sushi
lot
over
of
here.
yeah, I think being on the West Coast makes sense for timeline when you're talking to LA, but you never know. Like they might go to Europe.
They could
Because
go Europe.
sometimes There's other places that are
Yeah.
New Mexico, they could go.
they're
There's
really
Europe.
cool or they're
there's,
cost effective or they're whatever.
Yeah. I mean, Europe would provide for like all sorts of interesting looking universes if you were like in some of those medieval towns and stuff like that in Europe.
But Vancouver has a very diverse landscape, and we play for a lot of places.
Or yeah, or
Yeah, you
BC,
literally
yeah, more
drive up
specifically.
to
'Cause-
northern or in middle of BC to Kamloops,
Yeah.
and it looks like the desert.
and you
Yeah.
could do that. That's true too. So it's got to be BC. How about we put it at that? It's
Yeah,
got to be
Vancouver.
Vancouver, BC.
Go Vancouver!
Our hockey team's not doing well, but that's okay. But we're going to bring Stargate back here.
My real dream too is to film in Thailand.
Oh, okay.
So that would be I'd love to do like where we go someplace also.
Right,
Do
go
a
through
little-
the Stargate and
a
end up
field
in
trip.
Thailand.
Yeah. Why not?
Anything's possible.
Yes. Do you have a favorite Stargate episode? Not necessarily that you were in, but that you like to watch.
I mean, honestly, I watched all of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite episodes was actually the one that Tracker, right? That was
Yeah.
the name, the one that Mike was in, because I was friends with Kira Zagorski and Alex Ponovic, and I had not met you at the time, but I saw these, and I was like, this is such a great episode. It plays into Ronan's backstory, and it was just so great with the kid and all of it. That was probably my favorite, and you guys were so good in it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No. Oh, wow. That's one of my favorites. Who's the? I mean, there's a lot of good ones. But yes, probably the ones that I was in, because you just have it when you're in it and you
Yeah.
watch something. There's a different feeling. Not that I watch a lot of my stuff, but Stargate's always cool because of all the action that's involved and the character development. I always thought was really interesting. So for me, yeah. That episode Tracker was great. There was a few on Universe too that were like the last two episodes of season 1. I can't remember what they were called again.
You mean Incursion?
In SGU.
Yeah, Incursion, but in season 2, Common Descent and Epilogue where they aged you.
Yes, that was interesting
would
too.
be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
The aging process was really interesting. Where we ended up and who we ended up with was different. But it was cool. For me, was how I came on board as Aleutian Alliance. And then all of a sudden we get in this battle, and I realize things are going off the rails. And then I end up with a love interest with TJ, and that sort of started brewing there. So it was percolating. So
And who played TJ?
Elena Huffman. And so that was really cool to see where that went. So a lot of action, a lot of crazy stuff happened. Again, like I said, character development, love interest. So as a guy, as an actor, it's always great to be able to play all these different elements.
Right.
Not just the
Explore
typical
sensitive
bad-
side, the
yeah.
vulnerable side, and be the bad.
And not just be a bad guy or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
be a tough guy or whatever, right? So it's always fun to play.
What's yours, Simone?
I really
Tell
have
me,
a
do
soft
tell.
I really have a soft spot for Window of Opportunity, which is like the movie Groundhog Day, where every single day they relive
that's
the
right.
same day over and over again, and it becomes just wacko. Anyway, it's
That's
really
always
good.
fun. That's always a fun.
Yeah, and I do painting, so I actually did a painting of the mustard and ketchup plate. Happy face, which is out there. So that's really fun. And I also have a soft spot for the episode where in SG1 where Sam Carter has to navigate the awkwardness of having kind of a quasi love relationship with a child, because he's been embodied in a child's body when it's really like an
weird.
adult person. What is that called again?
Fourth Horseman.
Yes, Fourth Horseman.
Gosh,
I
you're
was
good.
in on
So
the other
good.
side, as Kalel, but yeah. So that I really like that episode just because she just plays it so well and it's so awkward. It's a really great episode, yeah. But I have lots, yeah. With Roland Emmerich in the mix on the new Stargate series, there may be an opportunity to release another Stargate movie or movies. And if Stargate 4 goes really well, which I'm optimistic it will, there's a chance that they could release other Stargate spin-offs. Thoughts?
Well, I guess the possibilities are endless. I mean, you look at the FBI franchise.
Yeah.
They've gone off in so many, or CSI even, CSI Las Vegas, CSI Miami.
NCIS.
NCIS, they're in New Orleans. Like, there's so many, when you have, like, great storylines and great characters, possibilities are endless.
They are.
Yeah.
That'd be, I think a feature would be really cool.
Yeah.
A couple big features would be really interesting to see. And Roland Emmerich, obviously, he does a lot of the big blockbuster movies, so that would be really cool to see. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, imagine what they can do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the spin-off, I like it. I like where you go with that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have Disney Plus currently, but I have, at times. And
Same! I'm like, is there anything good on there right now? Okay, sure, I'll renew my subscription.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm done.
Huge fan of Andor. I love that was a fantastic Star Wars series. And so I am a fan of the well-executed spin-off.
You're right, Star Wars is a great example of all the different spin-off TV shows. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you look at the Star Wars model, the Marvel model, like all those, I guess the reviews though are mixed because obviously they can't, be 100% every single time. Mm-hmm. Some are way stronger than others.
Yeah, and some of them make a great limited series like Agatha All Along and WandaVision, right? Like, they're all...
I love
Mm-hmm.
WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a fresh
so
series. I like that a lot, yeah. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm optimistic that it will happen. How did you initially get involved in Stargate? Talk about the casting process and how your role or roles developed.
My story is a little weird because I started off as a completely different character. I got cast as a replicator technician, a character that had no name in season 4. And then like a month or two later, I get call from my agent saying, oh, they're bringing you back, and they send you the script, which in those days was by courier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it arrives at your house by courier, and I'm like, and it says Sharon Taylor is Amelia Banks, Atlantis technician, and I thought, oh, they have the wrong Sharon Taylor. They have the wrong person. So I call my agent. I go, I think they have the wrong person. 'Cause I was a replicator technician, and he's like, oh, I'll check. So then he went and checked. He said, no, it's you. That's who they want. And he's laughing too because he's like, you're probably the only actor that would ever like question most actors would just show
Yeah, that was
up.
me. That's me.
Yeah, that's me. I can also ride a horse. So or whatever else actors say, right?
Yeah.
So so then I show up, and the next thing I know, I'm Amelia Banks, which is on the good guy ship because the replicators were the bad guy ship. And I did say to Joe Malazzi, I said, I was a replicator before, and now I'm on the good guy ship. And he said, well, replicators replicate people, so maybe that replicator was a replicated version of Amelia Banks, an image of her, right? So here she is on this ship. I'm like, great, I'll take it.
Gotta love sci-fi.
Yeah, gotta love sci-fi.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What about you? What was your journey into the Stargate universe?
Well, I was pretty green when I started as a film actor. At that time, and I went in for an audition thinking it was a 1-episode part, and Kal-El ended up playing over 3 seasons recurring on Stargate SG-1, which was pretty awesome. And yeah, I think I kind of cut my teeth a little bit on the show, and definitely like Chris Judge was a huge mentor of mine. Like he really, because he was so seasoned, like technically, because there's the aspect of acting, but then there's the aspect of technical acting, right? Which I just didn't really know.
Oh yeah, and so you don't know until you're there on set doing it.
Yeah,
like,
so
it's hard to teach.
There'd be times where it was somebody's coverage, and he would just like physically like pull me so that like we'd be in a better eye line, or just like he knew how to.
Oh, that's great.
Help me out a lot.
That's giving.
And those kinds of things are like so helpful.
That's
and
so
I
great.
never forget that. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great of him.
Yeah.
to be giving as an actor, it doesn't always happen, as you know, as you guys probably have experienced before with some. But to have Chris do that, that's amazing. That's great.
So
Yeah.
soft spot for him
good.
as a friend. Yeah.
How about you with your SG1?
It was weird because for me, I started out doing stunt work on SG1. I was a stuntman back in the day, so I was acting too, but stunt-wise, I was just busy and working, and I was very fortunate. And then I started doing stunt work, and I remember Richard Dean Anderson, RDA, would say something. He goes, "Okay, hey, how many times have I killed you already? How many times? How many times have I shot you? How many times?" I said, I know. Then I was doing a play, and a couple of casting directors, and I think Amanda Tapping went. Peter DeLuise went, and they saw me in this play, and then they were like,
They're like, he can act.
You're not a stunt guy. You're an actor. And I was like, well, thank you. Peter was like, sat me down and told me, he said, you have to understand, you're an actor. I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I was like, whatever. And then next thing you know, that sort of set the ball rolling. And then I started being brought in for a lot of auditions. And then I played a Russian character called Colonel Chernovshev. Was my first acting thing on Stargate, SG-1. And Michael Greenberg was like, well, why didn't you ever tell me you were an actor? I thought you were just a stunt guy. I said, well, we're not just stunt guys. I mean, but some guys act, some guys, I mean, I know some stunt guys that did plays, did theater, went to drama school, that was the whole thing. But sometimes you get pigeonholed in a certain way, and you just ride the wave.
Yeah,
exactly, they build a career that way. So why change, why rock the boat? But for me, I didn't want to stay doing stunts my whole career because acting was my number one goal, I guess, as in the film industry. So that's how it ended up happening. So there you go.
That's pretty awesome. What was it like working on Stargate?
Well, my experience was very similar to yours, where it was one of my very first professional shows I've ever worked on. And I was really nervous, and I wanted to do a very good job, which was really funny because it played into my character, because my character was very official, opening and closing the Stargate. And she really was, by the book, doing a good job, and that was like who I felt like I was inside. So I was playing myself.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and it was great because that was also where I learned all sorts of things, where hitting your marks and catching your eye lines and doing all. I mean, that was kind of where I learned all that too. Was on that show. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. No, it's true, right? It helps. I mean, I was very fortunate too with all the guys. Everybody accepted me, and I think obviously because of the stunt work, and I'd done a lot of stuff with the show before. But again, still, it's a different world as an actor than a stunt guy. So, but everybody was open and giving all the. I got to say, the crew and the cast were fantastic with me. I'm sure. I mean, you guys obviously have experienced the same thing. So, very fortunate to get on a show when you start after they've been there for years. And then they sit there and take you in, and they're there for you, because a lot of shows there's people that are just tired and they just want to do their work and get out.
Well, to that point, it was a well-oiled machine, right? So when you are coming in, people aren't as stressed out as they are on other shows, where they're still trying to find their legs the whole time, and they don't know how much money they're spending on each episode. And when you come in on that show, everybody was really had settled back into themselves. I feel like. Because the production team, Atlantis at least, because they've been doing it for so long at that point.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I was pretty green at the time, and I was very fortunate. I got to have a lot of scenes with the SGC team, so all the leads of Stargate SG-1. It was such a privilege, because Amanda Tapping was just blew me away with her acting, and then Michael Shanks, he just had all that exposition all the time, and he just knew it, rattled it off
so good,
so well. RDA was hilarious, and he'd always just have those one-liner quips,
zingers.
Yeah, and then Chris Judge, because he created my character. He wrote the episodes Birthright and Sacrifices, and so he and I would bond a lot of times in between takes, or just kind of as we were waiting to film, things like that. But for me, being on the planet Hactyl in the beginning, where you get to see this all-female planet of warrior women, it was so powerful to me as a woman. Like, it almost gets me choked up thinking about it. But just the world building that the production team did was so incredible. And we would drive, far out, and you're like, where am I going? And then you'd park and walk onto the set, and you're like, wow, this is awesome, right? And then they've got, fire and horses and, all these kind of cool things. And also, when I, kind of like you were saying, because I was new, I did endow my character, my leader, which was Ishta, right? She was played by Jolene Blalock from Star Trek. And so I, as the character and the actor, looked up to her. And so that was kind of a little more method acting at the time for me. But even like in between takes, I would just like look up to her and just be like, wow, she's like a blonde Angelina Jolie. Like, I just thought she was the most beautiful girl. And yeah, I was just really in awe.
That's cool.
I was just impressed how they had my character evolve to more of a powerful position by the end. So it was really special for me. Who were some of your favorite actors to work with on the show?
I mean, I didn't have a lot of scenes with Paul McGilligan, but I loved working with him because he would make me laugh so much.
Paulie's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paulie's so funny. I just worked with him, so it was, again, to reconnect, and we hadn't worked together in years, and it was just fun to. We just had a blast. They couldn't shut us up. Okay, guys, we're ready to roll. Let's go. Sorry, we're ready.
Yeah.
And then we'd be ready and go. But it was just fun to be able to reconnect, and then we just hung out, and it was able to. It was like 2 weeks of hanging out and working together, and so it was really fun. It was good. Yeah, Paulie was great. Paulie's great. I'm trying to think. Wow, I mean, I was very fortunate to work with. Man, all the guys on SGU were great. I mean, Elena Huffman was great. We became friends after working together and that, which is always nice. Same with Michael Shanks. When my first thing I ever did, he was very complimentary and very giving as an actor. And so, yeah, all the guys, man. Amanda was great, and I've worked with Amanda since as a director, and so there's always that bond, that little close, and that helps when you're working with somebody. I think it's amazing when they get that opportunity sometimes to work as a director, or work with these other actors, and there's a bond because you guys have worked together before, and I just think it helps. I think it really makes, and it makes a scene, you trust each other. And I think it makes the scenes better because you trust each other. You know that you guys are both going to give your best, and it's going to be awesome. You're going to play off each other, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you?
Well, obviously all the leads, amazing, which I just mentioned. But I had the fortunate opportunity to act opposite Lou Gossett Jr.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
That's right.
And even that chokes me up too. I geeked out as an actor so big time that I was like acting like some of these scenes where it's like head to head with such a powerhouse actor who I like grew up watching the movie Enemy Mine, and I loved that movie so much. Such a beautiful, touching film. And to finally and I find that in my career often, where I cannot believe who I'm acting with. And it just blows my mind.
That's awesome.
I love that about what we do. So that was really incredible. And a huge shout out to Tony Amendola, who also, I just adore as a human, as an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him at a convention once. He was very kind
Yeah.
of man. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Really good guy. Really, really sweet. And we could go on all day about all the actors. All the
Yeah,
guys.
if you go down the list.
Yeah, right. How many episodes of Stargate did you do? And what would you have liked for your character to do? If you...
Well,
I guess we kind of touched on that.
I think I did 12, and Stargate Atlantis got canceled, and my character was supposed to be in the next season. And they had said there'd be more for her to do, especially because she was turning into Jason Momoa's love interest. So So I was like, oh, yeah.
Man.
That part was a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, there's still time.
Yeah. There's still time. Yeah. I think I did 16, something like that, of Universe, or 18. I can't remember. 15. I can't remember.
That's a couple of zits.
And then what else? And then Stargate Atlantis, again, the same type of thing with Jason and I had a great time, and we did some fight scenes together, and so we hit it off really well. And it was really interesting because they were saying, because I think they saw that our chemistry was fine and we're getting along and we're able to do the fight stuff together. They're like, oh my God, you guys are going to go through the gate and you're going to go on these missions and you're going to be, so it was like getting excited to hear about it. And then the same thing happened. Mm-hmm. I think a couple weeks after that, they canceled the series and we're like, no.
See, my fantasy storyline really works well, right?
Yeah.
The godfather of our children. Like,
See,
it all works out.
I love it.
How about you, Simone?
Yeah, well, how many episodes did you do?
Oh, I did 6, I believe, over the course of 3 seasons. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But it was such a treat because, like I said, I just was happy even doing 1. But
Same.
Yeah.
now I'm like, I want more.
Well, you're like any actor. Yeah. I think it's the only industry where the actors are like, give me more. I'll work. I'll stay late. I'll do it. I'll do extra.
Not be an extra.
You want me
but
back
I
tomorrow?
will
Yeah.
Do extra.
Yeah. You want me to work tomorrow? Okay, I'm in. Don't you have a wedding? It's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll postpone the wedding.
So we've
My wife will understand.
I know it happened to me.
We've kind of touched on it, but who from Stargate have you worked with since, either actor, director, writer, producers, stunt coordinators? I'm sure that's a lengthy list for you.
Well, I guess so. Well, James Bamford I've worked with when he was directing on Arrow. So I did a season of Arrow, and so I was working with him on that. I was very lucky. I worked with Amanda on I think it was Arctic Air and a few other series. Paul McGillian, we just worked with. I'm drawing a blank on some of the other shows, but.
Jewel, have you worked with Jewel?
Not since that episode. No, I haven't worked with Jewel again. Not on Family Law. Yeah, I think there's a few other ones, but again, it's always interesting because you have that commonplace, especially with Paul and that. I just go back to Paul just because it happened recently, but you just have fun. And you know each other's work, and you trust each other, and you just have a blast doing your job. So it's nothing better. Yeah.
I've actually ended up working with you a bunch of times. We never had any scenes together on it.
On Stargate.
But like all sorts of other shows, Hallmark movies, Lifetime movies.
I love that. Like in the same scene?
Yeah, we're partner, cop, detective partners, and like.
Oh, that's awesome.
We've worked.
And then Continuum.
Yeah, Continuum. Amanda Tapping directed us in that. He kidnapped me. Gosh, bad guy.
As one does.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. And I got to work with Jewel State a bunch of times on Family Law as a lawyer, always opposite her. I was always the very conservative lawyer, and she was the very liberal lawyer, so we were always going toe-to-toe there. And then I've worked with Jason Momoa again on C. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you? Who
I did a Christmas movie with Martin Wood directing. That was a lot of fun. And then mostly because we're in Vancouver, I just cross paths with people all the time. Or if I was in LA, like, just judge picking up sushi or just like that kind of stuff. More
You're so
socially.
good at that. You're a very social person. You're very good at it.
Or I'd be on the lot and I'd be like, oh, hey, so-and-so, nice to see you. Or conventions, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's a good one. It was Andy Makita. I mean, Peter DeLuise, too, I worked with. But Andy was interesting because he was the first AD when I first worked with him.
Oh, on SG1.
And then we'd play hockey together sometimes. And then, and then he became a director, producer, and obviously throughout all the SG1s and Atlantis and SGU, he did a lot of SGU. So that was a really a fun, I guess, roundabout way to stay working together because as a first AD, dealt a lot with the stunt guys and that. So yeah, it was really interesting. It's true.
Speaking of Peter DeLuise, I just went to a screening of a short film that he and I starred in.
Fantastic.
We were comedically naked together. Don't worry, his wife.
Comedically named.
Anyway, it was like a Funny or Die type short film, but it was an award-winning short, and it was kind of like a film noir comedy.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah.
That's great.
Like very, the movie
That's fun.
Airplane, that kind of like prop
Yes.
humor. So yeah,
Fun.
that was really fun.
Fun.
That was really cool. Let's see. What did you like about your character on Stargate? Are there any similarities to you as a person? Well, you kind of touched
Yeah,
on
I kind of
that.
touched on that. I mean, it was also really cool in the Prodigal episode when they wrote in that I kickboxed. They wrote that in for my character because I do that in real life, so that was pretty neat. And the great thing about that too was it kind of kickstarted my career as an action actress. Pun
Nice.
intended.
Yeah.
That's right.
Boom.
Sharon is the queen of puns.
But
I love it.
But yeah, because as soon as I think casting directors saw I could do that, and I I ended up playing a lot of action roles after that. So yeah.
By the way, that is the coolest when writers actually take an interest in like, so what do you do? What are you good at? What do you do outside of this?
Right? Another
And then they
testament
fold
to
it
these
in.
guys.
Like
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how many black belts or what level
I have
are
a
you at
second
now?
degree black belt. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were like unofficially third.
No,
Oh.
I don't think I'll go for my third. It's so difficult. Like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's like your whole life for like months and months. That's all you got to do is like eat, train, and try to do your best physically. And
Pretty awesome.
I think I want to do other things. I still do it multiple times a week, but I don't need to test ever again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's intense.
yeah, it's intense.
Simone, what did you like about your character?
I-
How similar is it to you?
Is that the outfits?
Definitely
You,
wearing
I
leather
know,
on the
'cause
bag.
you do. Look at you got your leather right here.
It's faux. Don't worry, it's vegan. No pants were killed. No, I'm just kidding. I think I was trying to discover my character because I was kind of a newer kind of ancillary character to begin with, right? So I would just have to kind of be like, I'm in this world. I remember asking Chris Judge, like, I'm surprised there's no, what's it called when there's like a phonetic pronunciation?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how come there's no like glossary or whatever that it would be of how to pronounce things? Because I noticed everyone's pronouncing things different, like Jaffa, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh,
Whoa,
he said to
that's
me,
the big one.
he goes, we're all just winging it.
That's how I felt about pressing the buttons on the Stargate. I'm like, I have to commit to this. I have to decide what that sticker means and what that sticker means. And as long as I commit to knowing what those
And it
colored
works.
stickers mean, then it'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just kind of go with it. But I tried to be dynamic with her, with what I had, and find moments of strength, moments of softness. And then I think I tried to make her a little sexy. I don't know if that worked. But I was like,
Of course
I'm
it
wearing
worked.
leather.
You just do it
I'm
naturally.
I'm wearing like a little like leather crop top with my midriff, right? And,
It was sexy.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah,
sexy.
little dash of this, dash of that.
Oh, that's great.
How about you?
Varro, yeah, there's a few. I mean, listen, there's. I always bring, as much of me as I can into character. Even it makes it more interesting if he's a bad guy or whatever, right? And so there's always elements of you. I don't go kill people and shoot people or anything like that. But as Varro did, I think part of the fact that I grew up fighting a lot and doing that kind of stuff, and a lot of people didn't see that, and all of a sudden they see me fighting, like, oh crap, okay, he can fight. So I think that was the interesting thing about Varro, is that he's a good guy, but he could handle business if he needed to, and I think there's a little bit of similarity in my life to that, especially when I was younger, because what did Malazzi Joe would always say? Yeah, well, it's like you're a killer with a heart. And he said that's what makes these guys interesting, that you're able to convey that. And it's not,
Right. You can't just be a stereotype.
Yeah.
You have to bring some.
And so I was trying to bring that, and I think it came, but who knows, right?
It did.
I think it resonated, but it was one of those things that you try to find those moments, because I don't think every bad guy's a bad guy. You know, there's all this gray
don't
area
think
with
they're
these
bad.
characters, right?
Agreed.
They're just
Yeah,
misunderstood.
yeah, in a lot of ways, yes.
You came from a very rough planet, so
Yeah.
it was not, you either survived or you died. So,
Absolutely, and I grew up in a rough environment,
As a kid.
immigrant family from the former Yugoslavia, so, you know, we didn't have much money, so it was one of those things where you learn to fend for yourself, and
Yeah, it shapes
you guys,
well, it
you guys
shapes
will laugh.
who you are as a
You guys will laugh at this. So my parents, you know, my dad was trying to make us seem that we were cultured and the whole thing. So my dad I was going to public school in this rough neighborhood, and my dad would make me wear these corduroy suits with my name labeled on every article of clothing that I had. And I had white hair, and
Like blonde
I
hair?
had broken teeth because we couldn't afford to go. So my teeth were broken, and
This is like
and so I'd go to school with this, and it was a bright red on my lapel. You know, Michelle is my name, my real name, Michelle Dopud, and on everything. And then it would. So I would go to school, and everybody first couple of days, everybody make fun of me, and then that'd be a point like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to fight, and I was in the
Do you still
principal's
wanna make
office,
fun
and
of
yeah. And then I became friends with everybody, and you know, you win a few fights, things happen. So.
and then they
But
had
yeah.
broken teeth.
So that was it. So I could relate
So
to
we
yeah.
all had broken
Yeah.
teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you grow up and you don't know any other way to get out of it. You don't know. I got to stand up for myself.
And that's what bad guy characters are also too. They're products of their environment.
Yeah.
All those like Batman Begins, all the origin stories.
Absolutely.
they're all like, whew.
Scary stuff.
Michelle
But here we
Dopud
are.
Begins.
Yeah.
Your hair is going white again, so it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's
it's
like
stop.
going
Full
full circle.
circle, Mike.
I know. A little gray.
But your teeth are
Let's
looking
get that
good.
outfit
Yeah,
back.
well, it's amazing what dentists can do.
Any funny Stargate stories you'd like to share?
I have a story. I mean, nowadays this would never happen because of the political correctness of our environment of the world,
Yeah.
the world. But I think it was the very last episode of Stargate Atlantis, and Jason Momoa was wearing hospital clothes, and one of the higher ups at, I'm not gonna say their name, was like, as a joke, like in between, like right when he walks out, pull down his hospital pads, okay? And I was like, I am not doing that. And so, but this is like one of my bosses, right, saying, yeah, pull down his hospital pads.
Oh.
So I was like, okay. So
I know where this is going.
so as the scene's starting and Jason Momoa is walking out, I'm like, oh, I gotta pull, but he tied the strings so tight they didn't come down. So it was like nothing happened, and he was like, ah, you tried to get me. I mean, he's so playful, and that's the only reason why anybody would have ever suggested that in the first place, is because Jason is so playful.
Daddy.
There's lots of burping and farting jokes back then,
Yeah.
and like there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Chris Judge was notorious for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that one RDA would always, am I killing you again? You know, that was always funny to me because everybody would laugh, and a lot of people weren't around and they would, what do you mean? He said, well, he's a stunt guy. He's been killed a bunch of times on this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Stargate Universe was we had funny moments too, but it was sort of a different, darker theme to it, whereas SGA and SG1 were a little more playful, a little more, so you would have a lot more of those tongue-in-cheek humor moments. Yeah. Oh, Peter DeLuise. Oh, here's a good one. So I remember doing a stunt. I'm running up this hill, running down, I should say, across this hill, then I get shot and I fall down. And what Peter DeLuise would do is stunt guys get some danger pay called adjustments sometimes. And Peter would run up, and for the Americans out there that don't know, a loonie is $1. And he would come up, he goes, there you go, great work, Mike, here's a loonie. Thank you.
Yeah. Nothing broken. Nothing's broken.
Nothing broken, you're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you. And that was his thing, so that was always funny.
I'm gonna tell a story I've never told before.
Uh-oh.
So working on Universe, we were doing this scene on the ship, and it was like a huge crowd of everyone on the ship, like in this room, and I think Robert Carlyle was giving a speech, and it was just taking a long time to film, right? Because you have to do a lot of coverage, there's a lot of cast, da 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 da. And one of the background performers had the worst gas and was crop dusting the set, which means they were farting
And they're walking away.
farting silently. But the smell was atrocious.
So bad.
To the point that one of the cast members had to actually yell, "Whoever is farting, can you stop farting? Because you're stinking up the whole set. Close your butt." And everyone was just like, "Ugh," you know. Like,
Oh, that poor person.
but like
though,
you can't really
they
like
can't-
you can't clear it out. It's
Yeah.
not like, you know, it's not like a fire alarm where you can clear it out and come back. You know. So yeah,
Oh,
it was
no.
kind of bad. But yeah, Chris Judge was really fun on Stargate SG-1 because when we were doing the High Council scenes, we were wearing these really heavy robes, and he was wearing his underwear underneath because the costume said don't wear much because it's so hot. Plus they've got the torches going and the lights, and we were in this tin can of a studio, Norco Studios, for that, and it was summertime, and it was just like hot. And in between takes, he would like kind of, you know, "Hey Simone," like flash me his underwear, not in a Me Too way, but just in a fun, jovial way. And then he would, you know, pelt food at me in between takes, and it was just like we were always laughing. So
a lot of big kids on all those sets.
Yeah.
And then I remember Peter DeLuise when he was directing the High Council scenes, and he had some of the background performers on the council, and he just needed coverage of them like reacting. He'd be like, "Okay," you know, it would all be quiet, you know, MOS, which is called mit-out sound, which means no, they're not rolling sound. So that means the director can speak and direct while
As they're shooting,
they're
filming,
filming.
yeah.
So he's like, "Okay, so you're all deciding who farted, and you're looking to the left, and you're looking to the right, and then you're kind of grading the fart, and then maybe you approve, you know." And that was the way he directed the background
Oh, Peter.
to do their reactions to what we
The
were
early
doing.
2000s was a whole other world.
Yes.
Right?
Talk about working with any of these people.
Pick any.
Oh, I feel like we kind of did, right? We
Yeah.
just kind of went through the list of the people we've worked with. I will say, Amanda Tapping is always just such a professional. So,
Yes.
like, her energy is just so calm, and she's so, she's such a leader in real life, and I think that's why she's made that easy transition into directing.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. Obviously, a lot of these directors are former actors or still act, but they have moved on to directing, and they have just this incredible nuance of dealing with actors, having a way to speak to them, to understand, to get their point across, which is always good. And Peter DeLuise does too. He just does it in a different way. He uses more humor, I would think, right? With Peter, and he'd make jokes or make things, and then, but sometimes he'd get serious, and he'd bring you in and hug you, and like, okay, so I think this guy, you know, what do you think about? And so, and Andy Makita too. Man, I love working with Andy as well, just because we had that rapport of playing hockey together and stuff. But he was so good at his job too. Being a first AD too enables you to really understand directing in so many different ways. And you know your timeline, you know what you have to get done, and he doesn't mess around. He gets to it. Same with Peter. Peter shoots so quickly. I didn't work with Chris. That was the only, not much. I mean, we did some stunt work with Chris. Jewel I worked with. Jewel was, man, there's so many people here. Jewel State was great. It was, you know, that was on Tracker episode on SGA, and that was, yeah.
Nice.
I kidnapped her, and then
Oh,
there you go. So
you and your
Kidnap
kidnapping.
everyone.
there I go again.
And you and I.
for good.
Yes.
Just to help a little girl.
Trying to save a little
Yes,
girl.
yeah,
So,
it was for a good reason.
Okay.
yeah. And Jason, yeah, everybody. Martin originally, because he was producing with Stargate and writing and that, and with Joe Malazzi, all those guys. Brad Wright. Brad was always. I always looked at Brad as the leader, the kingpin, so to speak, if that's the wrong terminology to use. But I found Brad was always, and he was so knowledgeable about everything, and all the guys from Carl Binder to Joe Malazzi, to Paul Mully, who was there, all those guys. They were so many names, and they were all so knowledgeable about every character and every scenario in the episode. And that you could go to any one of them, and that's what was amazing too. You can go to the director, but a lot of times I would go to them because they knew the answer. They knew the Bible throughout. They knew everything about every character and where they were potentially going with it. So, and every once in a while they didn't know because we're discovering the characters as we go. So that was always interesting, and then they'd be open-minded about it to be able to say, okay, well, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think? Well, I think this would be interesting. What about if they had a relationship, or what about if they fell apart? You know, whatever it was, and it always they were open to ideas, which was great. Tony Amendola.
Yeah.
I did another series with Tony, so I have a
nice.
big place in my heart for Tony.
Yeah, I see him at conventions. Joe Malazzi, I love working with because he's so classy and he always dresses impeccably when he shows up to set. And I remember, because like normally when I work, you don't always get an experience with the writers or producers. Like it just depends. It's case by case on the show and depending on, you know, how long you're there. But I remember him looking so dapper and then offering chocolate, and I really liked that. He had all this like designer chocolate. He's a real
That's
foodie.
right. He's a
and
real foodie.
yeah. So I'm hoping he brings us back to when he comes to Vancouver to film the new
To offer
show.
more
and we
chocolate.
can all eat.
I like chocolate too.
Yeah.
Chocolate.
The
I like
thing I
chocolate.
also like about Andy Makita when he directs, because everyone has their certain way they call the shots, literally, like when they're calling action, and he'll always go, spin it!
That's
And I like
right.
that. It's a cool way to,
Yeah, good memory you have.
yeah. Let's talk about conventions. What do you love about doing Stargate or sci-fi conventions?
For me, it's obviously the fans. You get to meet people, and it's always interesting because a lot of times a lot of the fans will reach out on social media and stuff. So then you're able to, you sort of get an idea of what they might be, but then a lot of times they meet you and they're not as forthcoming, or they're a little more shy, or a little more, much more humble, so to speak. And so sometimes you have to reach out a bit more to say, hey, it's okay, hey, how are you? You know, because they get shy and they shut down a little bit. So that's always interesting. That was, especially the first few conventions I did. That was the interesting part. And then how the fans just love the show. And anytime you do a panel, it's always jam-packed, and the fans just really love the show. And they, so many times, they know more about what I said or what I did in the episode than, than I
we
do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
And somebody explained that to me, though, which was really cool, is that the reason the fans know is because they go back and rewatch certain scenes, and they rewatch it, and sometimes they'll go over scenes and rewatch it, and you're like, yeah, because it's an actor, you don't. Once it's done, it's done. You move on, and you go. I mean, there's certain lines every once in a while that you say that you're like, oh my God, I'll never get rid of that.
Well, I'm sure we have all our movies that we grew up with, or shows that we like to watch where we know the lines too, right? Princess Bride.
And how about you for conventions? What's your take?
I've really enjoyed myself. I feel like the best part about the conventions that I've done is that's where I met Simone Bailey, because she was in SG1 and I was in Atlantis, so we never had any scenes together. And that's where we first met, was in London. We both live in Vancouver, but we have to fly across to the other side of the world to get to know each other. And now she's one of my very best friends. Yeah.
And we call each other Stargate sisters.
Yeah, we're Stargate sisters.
Oh.
And everyone in real life thinks that we're really sisters.
Yeah, she looks more like my sister in real life than my own sister. Yeah.
And we get that a lot when we
do,
go out. They're like, are you sisters? Yeah, and I'm hoping that we do get to
Yeah,
play
one day
side
we
by
gotta
side
play.
doing
One day,
something.
yeah.
I agree. Because that would be really
for
cool.
ourselves.
Yeah, we became fast friends. I love Stargate conventions because it is the most famous I'll ever feel for a hot weekend. And I feel like there was actually a convention I did, at Gatecon, one of them, where as I was driving home, I actually got weepy, thinking, these people are nicer to me than my own friends and family.
Oh, not me though. Don't say that. I'm not nice.
I mean, like, there's just an outpouring of compliments and love and honoring, you know, the show and everybody. And we really do owe a lot of the success of this franchise to the fans.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Because without them, you know,
We wouldn't be here.
we
There
wouldn't
would
be
be
here.
there would be no reboot either. Yeah.
And these conventions, the gift that keeps on giving, right? One of the other things I loved about conventions was I had the fortunate experience to go to FedCon in Germany, which I was told is one of the biggest Stargate and Sci-Fi, or not Stargate, rather, Sci-Fi conventions. And this particular year, it was a bunch of Stargate actors and a bunch of Star Trek actors. And so there I was in this giant room with just hundreds of people packed, and the energy, and I got to share the stage with a ton of incredible actors, but one in particular, which was George Takei, who I would never, ever, ever think in a million years that I would be sharing a stage with George Takei. Like, that made no sense to me.
That's so cool.
And it was so cool. And when he came out, there was a standing ovation, and just the power of that beautiful, pure love and respect and energy, honoring him, and, you know, just, it was just unbelievable. But it was so funny because when I was backstage, I was so excited to meet him, but I was a little too scared to approach him. And all of a sudden, I hear someone's like, Simone, George wants to talk to you. I was like, me? And there was like let's say there was like 20 actors there, but of all the people he wanted to talk to me, and I was like, he wants to talk to me? Yeah, go over. And I see him sitting there, and his husband's there, and he's like, oh, darling, I just have to tell you, you were so fabulous in your performance in that Stephen Sondheim musical. And as he starts talking, I'm like, oh, he's got me mistaken for someone else. But I'm sitting there in this moment of meeting this hero who's gushing to me.
Yes.
That he's so excited to see me, and how great you're just a fantastic actress, and you're incredible. And I'm like, for that moment, I'm like, oh, should I tell him the truth?
No, don't.
And so I took a pause, and I just let it soak in for a second. And I said, George, I think you have me confused with someone else.
Oh, you did?
And his husband said, well, why would you do that? Why didn't you just take the compliment? I said, I can't live with myself knowing that I deceived this legend. And then it was nice because it was a real icebreaker. And then I asked because I wasn't familiar with the husband. I said, well, what's your name? He's like, oh, you could just call me hubby. So when we saw each other the next day and throughout that weekend at breakfast, I'd be like, oh, hi, George. I'm like, hi, hubby. And then George would be like, back off, he's mine. It'd just be like so funny. So yeah, things like that.
I had a similar fun moment at a convention where all the actors went out for dinner afterwards, and one of the other actors brought a friend. And she ended up sitting beside me, and she was a bit older than me, and so she says, "Oh, what are you working on?" Oh, she goes, "Stargate was so much fun. What are you working on now?" I said, "Oh, I'm working on this show called Smallville. It's like a Superman show." She goes, "Oh, I love Superman stories." She says, "I was in Superman too. My name is Sarah Douglas. I played Feora." And I was like, that's who I play on Smallville also. We play the same characters. But she played Zod's partner in Superman 2 out of the spinning glass from the Phantom Zone. And that's who I played in Smallville also.
Oh, wow.
She was also in Conan with the gold bikini witch lady, right? And yeah, she was...
And she's in Stargate.
And she did Stargate too?
She's a Stargate actor. She's a Tok'ra.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that because she was just hanging out at the convention.
Well, so she wasn't a guest.
She wasn't a guest. She came as someone's friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
Probably a friend through Stargate.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Oh my gosh. So for people who've never been to a convention, what's it like? Like, how would you describe your experience? And especially the first time that you ever did one.
Well, you don't know what to expect, right? Like if as a first time, you don't know what to expect, and there are obviously levels to this as well. And there's certain actors that have been on the show for a long time. There's other actors and other role players, day players, recurring guest stars. You have all types of different actors that are on there. So it was funny to see the first time I went and I was at my table. And then I can't remember who it was. Was it Amanda? And Amanda had a lineup going right out through the door, right out. And I had like 8 people. And there was a lineup for Amanda. But then you realize, well, obviously it's because of who she is, and she's a star of the show. And so that was really interesting. And then just the energy sometimes that it takes to talk to everybody. And you don't realize spending 10 hours a day speaking with these fans that you get to a point you're like, I'm exhausted, and you're trying to figure out, I didn't do anything today. I just sat there and talked to people. But then you're done and you're like, I have a drink and I'm done.
Same. I had the same feeling where I just go back to my hotel room and I just stare at the ceiling because I'm like, I think I just got overstimulated. Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then when they stand, because there's so many aspects. There's the signing autographs, and then you actually get to have a bit of one-on-one with the fans, which is great to hear their stories about how the multi-generations are watching the show, and now their kids are watching it, and they watch with the grandparents, and like that's really cool. And just how much Stargate has meant to people, and people talked about mental health struggles that they had, and that they were in very dark places, and the show brought a lot of levity and just comfort to them, entertainment and joy, and they really care about these characters. They're invested. So there's that. There's also the funny aspect of getting, the kind of step and repeat of all these fans taking photos with you. And the people that do the photos are like, next. And so you're just like, hi, smile, smile. And your face hurts because you have been like, hi, nice to meet you.
But you know what struck me about that was that I kept thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like smiling quickly, and I'm sure I must be blinking in some of these. But they know everybody looks great in all the pictures. The fans look great, the actors look great, and I'm thinking, no one's blinking. Like, wow, they're just pros, those photographers.
And isn't it impressive, the costumes? And some of them are the legit wardrobe from the show that people purchased. Yeah. Because I think also
all the cosplay, right? I love when you have like 10 people dressed as certain characters, right? The same character, all of 10 people dressed like that. So that's all.
Don't I have a picture of the 3 of us with a snake guy?
Yeah.
Apophis. What's his name again?
Apophis.
Thank you.
Or Jaffa? Snake guy?
Yes.
Serpent helmet?
It's you guys with the serpent guard with the serpent helmet on.
Yes.
I
Right.
think at the bar.
We're at the bar. It was such a random moment. We were the 3 of us.
It's the best picture ever.
The 3 of us
It really is.
we were literally at the bar, and then this guy comes up, and I'm like, we have to take a picture of this. Yeah.
It looks like you're just hanging out at the bar together.
Yeah. And we were doing that, so we were like, laughing.
Yeah, that was our friend who had flown in to Vancouver to Gatecon from Switzerland and had brought that
Costume piece?
that had
Wow.
yeah.
How?
Bring that on
That's
the
gotta
airplane.
cost, yeah.
Go through customs with that.
Commitment and love for the show.
Yeah.
Tell us about some moments with the fans at some point, or at some of the Stargate conventions that you've been really moved or impressed.
Well, I mean, as far as being moved emotionally, it's I've had that same experience, what you said, where people are explaining how much the show meant to them. And I've actually had, because my character's military, I've had people who were in the U.S. military come to my table and talk and say, I was in the military, I have PTSD, and just watching the show and finding that escapism brings me so much joy, and like that was very moving for me.
Yeah, there's been a few times, but I think I remember one of my first conventions, one of the fans was, again, I was at the bar at the end of the night. And,
There's a theme here.
The theme. Woo! Anyways, I was sitting there having a drink, and he came by to have a drink, and he sat away. And I remember him coming to my table before, and he seemed like a nice person. And was sitting there, and he asked, "You mind if I sit here?" And I said, "No, go ahead." And I said, "Let me ask you." I go, "I'm curious as to why do you go to conventions?" Because I was trying to understand the whole thing of people spending a lot of money on a weekend, with their families or without their families to go and see a convention. And he said, "Oh, I'm glad you asked me that." And he's like, he goes, "I have a job where I work 9 to 5. I'm in front of a computer all day long, all day long, all day long. And it's a high stress job." And he said, "Gets to the point when I get home and I'm able to watch you guys on TV, it's my escape." And he said, "And it keeps my sanity." And he said, "I've had some mental health issues in the past." And he said, "That's what keeps my sanity. So that's why I come to a convention like this, because I have a chance to see the actors that I enjoy." And so for me, it's not a waste or an extravagant expense. It's actually part of what my life is. And so I thought that was moving to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't realize what your work sometimes, how much it resonates with people. We're still actors. We're just trying to do our thing. We're trying to, we do it because we have to. I know most actors have to be an actor. They don't know what else you could do. And for me, it's the same thing. You don't always realize what an impact you have on the fans and the people watching. So for me, that was one of those moving moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's impactful. These people really love the show and they love your performances. And so it really is touching. And
Well, I had another profound moment where one day I realized...
1 second.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't let him buy the drink. I bought the drink. Okay?
You bought the drink?
He offered to buy the drink. I said, no, I got the
You're
drink.
what a good guy.
I'm like,
what a
no,
good
you
guy.
can't. After telling me that,
No.
now, you want another one?
I
Have another one.
Well, I had another profound moment where I looked around one day and I realized, all these fans are from different countries all over the world, and they all know each other. They're all friends with each other. So for me, I'm like, they're not really here to see us. They're here to see their friends. Yeah. And we're just the cherry on top. So that part was
That's
cool.
a good way.
Yeah, that was
That's
kind of fun.
true.
Agreed. And it's so cool to be in the green room, like when we finally have a lunch break and all of us actors are there, like just to take that moment to look around, and so many of us that have all these wild bodies of work, and just to sit there and be like, wow, like I pinch myself that I'm in the fam.
Included, yeah.
But what's also cool is the fans that either with their cosplay, the Stargate dresses or the t-shirts they make, and there's a photo of me on the shirt, or one girl showed up one time with were you
The nails, the fingernails,
girl, she had
with our faces.
our faces perfectly on every
in
nail.
England.
It was incredible. I had some of the gifts, like a girl made me a wonderful lady made me a hand beaded bracelet, which was fantastic, that I still wear. And I've had people make wood cutting things. I still have a coaster that I use every day at my makeup station that says Kalel on it. Someone made me a pen, and they whittled like the wood and the whole thing, and it was from another country. Like things like that have so much heart, and it's such a gracious thing that they would be so thoughtful to do those things for us. So it's a lot of that is really touching to me. Let's talk about Gatecon. Gatecon was held in Vancouver, Canada, where the series was filmed. Why does that convention stand out to you?
Well, I think literally because of what you were just saying before. It stands out because of all the casts. There's so many casts that are in Vancouver, and then you get a lot of the American casts that come up as well. Yeah. And it was funny because for a while I was coming up from LA to come up here for the convention, but seeing everybody. And again, there's such a great atmosphere with Gatecon. I found that everybody there it's pumped up. Everybody's into it, and the fans are great. And like you said, a lot of people cosplay, a lot of people in the different characters. Yeah, I think it makes it fun. It's always I try not to ever miss it. So really good.
Yeah, mostly to see all our friends, see people that we all work with and hang out.
Yeah. And they raised a lot of money for various charities over the year, so it's a real feel-good thing as well.
That's good.
I recall spending time with Cliff Simon, our beloved Cliff Simon, who's since passed on, and yeah, just having some great laughs and cool moments with him and other people. It's really touching, and I think for us, it's almost like kind of like going to an awards show like the Oscars or the Emmys, because the rarity of getting that many performers in the same room is pretty terrific.
And it's a strictly Stargate event, right?
Yeah.
So that's what makes it even more special.
Yeah. So how long have you been in the business now, and how has your acting changed from then to now?
Well, I guess I started in 2006 as like TV and film, but before that it was all theater. So I think now I'm way more playful, than I ever would have been when I first started out. Because as I mentioned, when I was first starting out as Amelia Banks, I was pretty serious. How about you?
Very cool. Since 94, 93, I started. It's been a little while. But yeah, I think the same thing. I think at the end of the day, you start, I think when you're new, you're trying to be as perfect as you can be. You're trying to not make any mistakes. You're trying to be, like I said, I guess perfect, and you think that's good acting. You don't realize that a lot of times it's when you let loose, and then obviously you do your work, you know your dialogue and stuff, but you just sort of let loose. You're more comfortable. And I think that obviously happens with age and experience. So yeah, that would be the biggest thing. Yeah.
I too came from theater and switched to pro film in 2000, so that's 26 years of being in the biz. I think as well too. I was trying to be correct and do my lines, and I think coming from theater, I was really invested in character work, and my mom would always say to me, why are you always doing character? Like, I'd even do voices and things, like, really high voices and just different kind of physicalities and things like that, because that's what I prided myself doing when I was in theater. Like, I would love if you could watch me and you would never know that it was me. Like, I'd like to, do that kind of morphing. And then my mom said, why don't you just use your real voice and just be you? And I let that land, and I definitely am way less precious about things. Yeah, more playful, more primal, which is a big one. And I'd say that my acting is, maybe in the beginning I was a little more method. Now I'm very Meisner, which is more of a method of responding off of what is given to you in the moment and being very present and active listening. That's more kind of my style now. Yeah. But I still do characters.
Yeah, you are a character, let's be honest.
What's your favorite movie and why?
Like, outside of the Stargate world?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing? No.
You know what? One of my favorite movies is True Romance. I have a poster up in my living room, and I love that movie. It's one of the first movies that Quentin Tarantino wrote, and I'm a Tarantino fan, so I love how, like, the craziness. I love all the incredible actors. I love how the scenes are intercut and the story jumps from all the different characters and places. I loved it.
What about you? Yeah, what's your favorite movie? You're like, I hate this question.
No, I love it.
Oh, okay.
Like, to some people, it's such a controversial movie, but to me, it's a no-brainer. I love the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, directed by Terry Gilliam.
Side note, she had a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas party this summer that I went to. Everyone had to dress up like that, so.
Yeah. But I love it because Benicio del Toro is bananas and just the best, as he always is. Johnny Depp is hilarious. And all the other characters. It is so much fun, and there's so many different little, what do they call them, Easter eggs? Cookies? Yeah, Easter eggs in the movie that you can keep watching it over and over again, and there's always new things you will find, and it's just brilliant. Like, I think all across the board, everyone did a fantastic job. And it's a very quotable movie. And there's a lot of us that are like huge cult following of that film. And I am always rallying for our local theaters, the independent theaters here, to put it up.
put it
I
up,
would love to rewatch it with you, just to get
It
your
is
energy
so
off.
good. I
Right.
love
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So one of my favorite things is when I know someone who does know the movie and we can just riff for like an hour, just saying lines from the movie over and over. It's so good.
Well, I always go back to Mad Max, the original Mad Max, for me, and it was, I guess, growing up immigrant family in this poor neighborhood and stuff, and then my brother and I, it was like the biggest gift ever. We got this VHS machine, and we were able to watch rent movies, and my brother was into, he's older than I am, and he was into movies, B movies, action movies, that type of thing, and we watched Mad Max on it, and it was like, you just opened my eyes to this post-apocalyptic world that I thought, oh my God, I want to be in a movie like this. I have to become an actor. I have to. So that's why I love that. It does. You watch it now, it is a lot of, and there's two versions, right? There's the Aussie version and there's the American version, where they dubbed all the voices in America. Yeah, it's really weird. They dubbed all the Aussie voices because it was filmed in Australia. So all the Aussie accents that they had, they dubbed to put American voices and all. And at the time I was young enough that I didn't really realize till I rewatched it again with the proper actors' voices, and that was much better. Just because back then, I guess technology wasn't that great, so their voices didn't really sync and match. It didn't make sense, so it was really silly. But having said that movie, I still remember it, and it was like one of those eye-opening moments where I'm like, if I could ever do this, be in a movie like this, that would be the bomb. And then I ended up.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it worked with playing Keurig was
you're
pretty
Mad
close.
Max in that.
And in that, so wearing the patched together clothes and all of that, and being a fighter and being just for survival, trying to save a woman, trying to save a child, I should say. And so that's one of my favorites.
That's your movie.
Yeah.
Do you have any dream directors or actors you'd like to work with?
Yeah, I would love to work with Meryl Streep.
Oh,
That would be one for me. I would love to work with her.
not intimidating at all.
Oh no, right? Yeah, it would be pretty amazing. Is that a script? A friend of mine, that's a producer, sent me this script once, and he was targeting Meryl Streep and was asking if I would play this other role, and I was just like, please, I'll do it. I'll do it for free. Let me do it. It didn't materialize, but that was, she's one of the people when it first comes out. And Anthony Hopkins as well. And for me, directing would have been, I don't know how many more movies Clint Eastwood is going to make, but he was a guy that I really wanted to. And Denis Villeneuve, who's a Montreal director that has done some.
Professional?
No. He did Sicario.
Oh, of course.
And there's a bunch of other ones. I'm just drawing a blank all of a sudden. But yeah, he did the Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah.
And he just has a slow burn method of shooting, which I really enjoy. So, yeah.
How about you? Any dream actors or directors you'd like
I
to
have
work
a
with?
vision board, and Jeff Bridges is on my vision board. I've just
so
always
cool.
loved him ever since I was young. I was first in The Fisher King, and his character was so brooding and complex and traumatized, and then
I wish I knew that because I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with him.
What?
I did a whole show with him, but not as an actor. I was.
Oh, weird.
I was a.
Okay, we'll talk about
Yeah,
We'll talk
that's
later about
that's really cool. Oh, I
yeah,
could have.
yeah. I don't know why. There's just something about him. I'm so drawn to him. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And
I mean,
the old,
I-
and also I watched the whole Old Man. When my Disney subscription was active, I watched The Old Man, and I quite enjoyed him in that recently too. Yeah, such a talented man. Yeah. How about you?
I have tons. One is past. I mean, David Lynch was high on my list. Huge Terry Gilliam fan. I love. Who was our Moulin Rouge director?
Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann. Tim Burton. I love obviously stylized stuff. I mean, I'd love to be in a Fast and Furious movie, but that's not really a director-dependent thing.
It'd be fun.
But I really admire Kate Blanchett. So she kind of
She's
would
good
be
too.
my Meryl
Yeah,
Streep,
she's
you know,
good.
because I just think she's just
So many.
Can do anything.
amazing.
Yeah, so good.
I'd love to hug The Rock. And
He used to be on my vision board, yeah.
oh really? Yeah. I mean, there's lots, but generally that's it. Yeah. But point of interest, I used to be Paul Thomas Anderson's yoga instructor.
Oh, hey.
So
That's cool.
I still have yet at this point of filming to see one battle after another, but that's also high on my list to watch.
Great movie.
Well, getting back to that, I know it may sound woo-woo, but do you believe in manifestation, Sharon Taylor?
Why, yes, I do.
I'm gonna tee that up.
That's right. I mean, that's why I have my vision board. And I have posted about it on my Instagram that things start to come true one by one on them, and I can take them off. And it really works. It really works. I believe that energy flows where consciousness goes. So if I consciously put out there the things that I want and I'm interested in or I'd like to experience, it starts to unfold around me.
And you really have had a lot of things come true.
I truly have had a lot, like a strange amount. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in it. I believe in manifesting certain things. Absolutely. I remember my father. I ended up doing a movie called Rollerball, but they were auditioning for it. It was a remake, and it was shooting in Montreal.
I've actually seen it.
Yeah.
I've actually seen it.
Why is that such a bad thing?
Because I was dating a guy who made me watch it with him. And I was like, what are we watching? And he was like, this is a great movie.
Listen, it's John McTiernan directed, and I loved him from all the the Die Hards, the Predators, and I said, I have to be on this movie. And you need roller skaters, you need motorcycle. Okay, I can ride a motorcycle. I can do the roller skating. I'm an actor. Yeah, I'm in. I was flying myself all over to try and get in these auditions. Oh, wow. And I did. I got in Toronto, and then I got in LA, and then I guess at one point they were like, it's an interesting story because I was at my bachelor party in Calgary, Alberta, and then I get a call saying, listen, are you available till November? And this is June, or this is July. November? Yes. Well, for what? For rollerball. Come in. You're going to be an actor, but right now you're one of the guys that can actually rollerblade at a high level and ride motorcycles and that. You'll be hanging off a motorcycle for most of the time. And
Wow.
he goes, let your facial hair grow. I'm like this. Oh, okay, this is great. And then I said, well, I'm getting married in 2 weeks. And they're like, well, don't worry, we'll be rehearsing for the next 2 weeks. And I said, okay, great. So my wife is trying to call me. I was tired. I was hungover from the just all the drinks and the party that we were at. So everybody's calling saying, my wife's calling saying, I need to talk to Mike. Everybody thought I was in trouble. And no, I wasn't in trouble. My wife totally knew what I was doing there. But she's trying to say, they're looking for you. You got to answer them. They need to know. Because it's like you have to be, this is a Saturday. You have to be there Monday. So literally we got the news. I'm like, yes, I'm in. And it was, a nice contract. I'm like, okay. So I go home. So I get pack up. I go. And Angela's like, my wife is, you're going to be back here in 2 weeks, right? I said, yeah, absolutely. Well, not after we start rehearsing, the director, John McTiernan, decides, we're going to shoot Friday and I'm getting married Saturday. I'm like this, no, I can't. And then John McTiernan was at the time going through a lot of, I think, personal issues or whatever. And so he was firing a lot of people. So the producers and the first AD were like, Mike, we can't tell him that you're going because he'll just fire you. I'm like this, what do you mean just fire me? I'm going to get married. It's one day. You guys weren't supposed to, shoot. So anyways, I decide, whatever, I got to go get married. And I get fired. This is more important. And I just couldn't believe that that's what it had come to. So they get a photo double for me. Don't worry, we're going to make them, all the ADs are like, we're going to make them shoot the other side first. That first day, it's just going to be more of a trial. And sure enough, they call me up the first thing to do. And the photo double comes out and he's like, that's not Mike. What the fuck is going on here? where is Mike? And they're like, he's getting married. Everybody said, you went to get married. Yeah, well, when's he coming back? Tomorrow. Oh, fine. We'll shoot him Monday then. You better be here Monday at 6 a.m. I was like, so they called me, you know, and at that point I turned my phone off. I said, I'm just getting married. I'm going to enjoy my weekend and get married. And so that Saturday we get married. I made the rehearsal. We got married. That Sunday morning, I'm saying goodbye to everybody. My parents, my whole family was
Flying into town.
flying into Vancouver for the wedding, and I was going back to Montreal to shoot Rollerball. And I'll end it by saying the reason I really wanted this movie, not so much just for me, but my dad was terminal in cancer, and so we had to move our wedding up to July. So that was why. And then if I could shoot a movie in Montreal, because my dad had never been on a movie set, so I thought it'd be so cool to have him, bring him to movie set, and while he was still able to.
Yeah.
And so we got married, and it all worked out. And that was all. When we talk about manifesting, that was literally every night I was just putting it out there. And sometimes you got to let it go, but I was just I have to do it. I was so determined that I was going to get on this movie.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
And did your dad get a chance?
Yeah,
to
he
visit you on
went.
set?
He came to set. Yeah, the whole thing. And then I was able to stay with him the last month of his life because we wrapped in November, and then we stayed in Montreal. I came back here to shoot a TV episode. Can't remember what it was. It was such a blur back then. And then I flew back in February, and I stayed with my dad February to March, and he passed March 3rd. So I was able to be there. And then we had reshoots to do in April in New York. So it all worked out. It was amazing how so power of manifestation sometimes works.
It totally works.
There you go.
I thought that's a beautiful story.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool one.
Sometimes I don't know if it's that I'm like low-key psychic or what, but I do get visions of things, and so in a way it is kind of coupled with manifestation, I guess. But one of them was I always dreamt of living in Los Angeles, and I had visions of it, and it was kind of right when I gave up on that is when it happened for me. And I guess another one was Battlestar Galactica. I was such a fan. That was my gateway TV show to sci-fi at that time. And no offense, Stargate, I still love you. You're still my homeboy. But yeah, and I had auditioned, and I went out for like Baltar's Lawyer, and it didn't go, and I was like, oh. And then finally, I got an audition for the series finale, the 2-part series finale, and I had to go in and put a match out in my mouth, which is called eating a match. And back then, they had the exec and director in the room, and so I did it in the room, and he was like, how did you do that? And I was like, oh, well, I practiced. And when I watched the YouTube video, and I practiced, and I actually, but I was like so amazed. I was like, did no one else do that in the audition? Like, was I really the only girl that came in and did that? Anyway, but I had been just like thinking about that show. I just loved that show, and I was so enthralled, especially with the Baltar 6 dynamic. Those were my favorite characters. And I got a call from my agent. I was driving, and she's like, Simone, you got the role. They want you. And I was like, and I pulled over, and I was like, oh my God. Really? I was so, see, I get teary-eyed just think about it. I was so excited. Mm-hmm. But I think I had put a lot of energy into that.
Yeah.
Like wanting that so bad. So that meant so much to me as an actor when that happened. Yeah. So I'd like to reverse FTL and go to the past and talk about your theater career. What did you love about doing theater, and would you ever do it again?
I would do it again. I got my degree in theater, like you, my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and after university started a theater company, and we did shows all over Vancouver and Granville Island, and they were union equity shows, but we made no money, and then there sometimes would be more of us on stage than people in the audience, which can be terribly disheartening when you've worked so hard.
Yeah.
So the camaraderie was wonderful, and I had so much fun. And I think Vancouver wasn't really a theater town, so it was the shows that were like comedies did really well, but the shows that were kind of dark and meta did not do well at all back then here. So yeah, I would definitely do it again. Yeah. Did you do theater?
Yeah. No, I love theater. I mean, there's nothing like it when you're on stage, and if you have a monologue or something that you're doing, and you can just feel the audience is into you every once in a while. That there's like, okay, I'm on, things are going. Oh, you can just feel it, and that feedback you get, that instant feedback, is amazing for me. And yeah, I would do it again in a heartbeat. But yes, and the reason I got away from it was because of film. And then I went back to it and did a couple plays. Last one was about 10 years ago. So yeah, maybe it's time to do another one.
Okay,
But yeah.
3 of us should do a play.
Oh
What
my
should we
gosh,
do? Yeah.
Yeah, but
that'd be
you
so
come from
cool.
theater, so how about you?
My background, I graduated at the University of British Columbia with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting, which is also where Michael Shanks and Alex Zahara went, also Camille Sullivan, a bunch of other people. Fabulous program there where you have to audition to get in. They have 140 applicants and they accept 12. Wow. So that was really exciting. I was one of 3 women to graduate, and the first year I was there, I did something like 7 plays in a year. And I remember Alex Zahara came up to me, and he was, older, a couple years or something, and he was like, "So, I hear you're the hot actress on campus," And I was like, and I thought that was kind of cool. Like, he had noticed that I was in a lot of plays, but I loved theater. I trained with a Shakespeare guru of Canada who's passed on, Neil Freeman, fantastic guy, and I ended up working for a Shakespeare company out of university, but I would do all these big plays, and sometimes for like 4,000 people when I was touring some of these Shakespeare shows, and I loved it, but you had to be in the audience, otherwise you missed it. So I loved the archival aspect of film, and also the money, was pretty enticing. So that's why I switched. But I would like to do theater again. There's a couple plays that I have always had on my bucket list, and specific roles I want to do. So that is something, yeah. Although it terrifies me. I don't know how, I used to do Shakespeare shows where I would do 2 shows in rep, which means you do 1 show one night, 1 the next night, plus I was understudying the lead of another show, so I'd have 3 Shakespeare, full play, things in my head at any given time. I can't even imagine how I do that now. I'm like,
neither. And also,
where did I put my phone?
Yeah, as humans, our attention span have evolved to shorter and shorter.
Yeah, look squirrel.
So, yeah.
Devolve, exactly. Devolve.
Yeah, devolve. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. What is some of the greatest acting advice that you've ever received?
Well, this is gonna make you cry because this makes me cry every time. But I worked with Vincent D'Onofrio on Ghost Wars, and he would give all the actors little bits of acting advice, and because he's also an acting teacher, and he'd be like, "It comes from your tummy. It comes from your tummy." But there'd be moments where someone was having trouble really getting into a scene or a moment or a memory, and he would say, "Close your eyes," and he would say, "Imagine someone you love, and their cheek is pressed up against your cheek, and they're humming." And then so you would close your eyes and you'd imagine someone you love with humming against your cheek, and it makes me cry every time. It makes me cry every time. It's just so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. No, just because I was just with my mom in Montreal visiting. So.
That's where I go in my head.
Yeah.
So my grandfather's passed, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Acting advice. I never had anybody just tell me what to do or how to be or try this or try that, but it's just watching. For me, I think it was just watching other actors, well-known actors. I remember watching Michael Keaton. I'm doing scenes with Michael Keaton in White Noise, the movie White Noise, and they decided to change.
You did scenes with Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool. And then I was blown away. Everything's going great. The whole day's going great. A couple days this was the first day, and we had to change because we lost the location. It was a low budget movie that ended up doing really well. And we lost the location, so all of a sudden we had to come up with different dialogue. And then just watching Michael and him talking to me, and his eyes are so expressive, and the way he would look at me. And I'm sitting here, and the whole time I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'm talking to Michael Keaton. I'm like doing a scene with we're discussing how to make this scene better. We're like in my head, and then all of a sudden one of the producers goes, look at you, working with Michael Keaton. And I'm sitting going, oh shit. I'm working with Michael Keaton. Oh my God, I better be good. Right back in my head, I was like, oh crap, be good. Just listen, remember, listen. Feel your toes, listen to them. That's funny. I reverted all of a sudden back to my first acting gig. I was like, oh shit, I'm working with Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
But then it was like, it all worked out really well, but it was just really interesting. Yeah, I was sitting there going, but his eyes were so expressive without doing much, right? Just looking at him, he was connected and looking the way he would look at me, and he's got these big, beautiful eyes, just the way they moved, and I was blown away. Yeah. So those are those moments that, just be connected, I think, is be present, be in the scene, and it's the biggest thing. So that was one of those moments.
Did you have
I had the very fortunate privilege of studying with one of the greatest acting instructors, Ivana Chubbuck. And I spent a very, deep intensive with her in a class. And I have her book, which she inscribed to me. And she basically said, Simone, I'm going to cry. But she's like, oh, you're a phenomenal actress, which meant so much because she's like such an amazing person. Like she had trained Brad Pitt. Like
Halle Berry.
People, a lot of Halle Berry, like all these like huge like people. And she was like, when you get out of your head and you're primal, you are unstoppable. And just like to be, sorry, I'm all schmoopy right now, but it just meant so much because like she's such a revered teacher, and for her to say that about me meant so much. Like I think a lot of times like we just want to have that validation and like to be seen, as an artist. So that meant a lot.
Oh. Tissue.
I have an old one in my pocket.
I'll take it.
There's some gum in it also.
So what can we look forward to that's coming out for you guys?
Well, this goes back to manifesting. I have a picture of myself on my vision board in actually it's a photo of not myself. It's Zoe Zinalda in Lioness, and it's the image from Lioness on there.
Right.
And then so something happened. And so then I auditioned for Terminal List with Chris Pratt in Toronto, and the character was a lot like that lioness type character in there. And so I did not get on Lioness, but it was one of the producers or directors, someone who had worked on Lioness ended up seeing my tape and brought me into Terminal List. So I got to work with Chris Pratt earlier this year. But
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I did 2 episodes of Terminal List, but then my character, they ended up making her very official, and so I wasn't in the field. They decided to make her more of like working in the office and doing like the intelligence stuff. So then I was like, oh, it didn't quite work out the same, but I guess I still manifested it in its own way somehow. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, me.
You always have lots.
No, I have, a couple little things, but one is a new Netflix series on Netflix called Trinity. It hasn't been technically announced that I'm in it, but I'm in it. And that was a really great government conspiracy theory about World War III and the safety and security defense teams. And so I can't say what I'm playing yet because it hasn't been announced. But it's cool. It's really great. And I was really thoroughly impressed with the scripts and that. So I'm excited. Hopefully, comes out in July next year, July 2026. On Netflix.
Okay,
Trinity.
we're going to be watching.
Trinity.
I can't say, but I worked on a mega movie that's going to be humongous. coming out maybe 2026. I'm not sure. And then I have a short film that is making the rounds in.
Do I want Peter DeLuise?
No, that was a while ago.
Okay.
But short film that's making the rounds right now. We were just nominated for Best Drama, and we continue to go all over the world with that. And it's a proof of concept for a feature. So I am the #1 on that film, and it meant a lot to me because it was a period piece Western set in the 1800s. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Very good. Very
So
cool.
to end off, do you have any message for the fans?
Well, my message for the fans would be enjoy the new Stargate. That's a stupid thing to say. Let me say it.
It's actually good.
Yeah. I guess I'm excited for all the fans because they've kept this franchise alive. It's because of them. So they will soon be rewarded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. I can't wait to see the new Stargate and to see what they do with it. And so make sure you guys watch. Make sure you watch. So that means it'll stick around.
Mm-hmm. Seasons and seasons of it.
Yeah.
And spin-offs.
I like that. Spin-offs.
Spin-offs!
Yeah, I'm so excited for the new series, and the new news is breathing life in the whole entire community. It ripples in every which way. The conventions are going to be that much more exciting. The people that make, any merch or props or, anything, I just think, I feel like we should all just have a giant party and rejoice and dance like Charlie Brown characters, just like celebrate and, do a little ribbon around the maple or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm really thrilled, and thank you all so very much for your support and love and keeping the show and the fandom alive. Means a lot. And special thanks also to Dial the Gate and Gate World for having us today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Darren and David.
Thank you guys.
We love you. We love you all.
Thank you.